Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to be honest with you. Today, we are opening up a file that I found. Well, it's intense.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very concise, incredibly dense text, but the implications of it are they're massive. We are talking about a radical rethink of something that affects millions of people.
Mm.
Diabetes, metabolism, and really the entire history of how humans eat.
It is a heavy topic, isn't it? But the source material we have today is fascinating because it's so direct, it doesn't mince words.
Not at all.
It takes concepts we usually treat as these medical inevitabilities, things we just accept as, oh, that's part of aging, and it flips them completely on their head.
Exactly. The document we are looking at contains excerpts from a text focused on, and get this title, Preventing Diabetes Bankruptcy.
Ooh.
And right off the bat, that phrase stopped me cold. Diabetes bankruptcy. It sounds terrifying. It sounds like something a debt collector shouts at you.
It is designed to be terrifying. I think it's meant as a wake-up call.
But before we get into the fear factor, let's set the stage. What is the mission of this deep dive? Because this source makes a really bold claim. It argues that diabetes is not a genetic destiny.
Right.
You aren't born with a ticket to get it. Instead, it argues it's a metabolic mistake, a mistake we can fix. And the key to fixing it, looking back about 3 million years.
Right. It suggests that to save ourselves from this bankruptcy, we have to stop eating like modern humans and start eating like our ancestors. And I don't mean our grandparents, I mean our ancient ancestors. The premise is that our bodies are basically time machines stuck in the wrong era.
The hook here, for me, was definitely that phrase, diabetes bankruptcy. When I hear that, I think of money. I think of losing everything. I think of a gavel coming down. But in this text, it feels like it means something. Visceral. It's not just about paying medical bills, is it?
No, it's much more systemic than that. It's a physiological state. When the source uses the term bankruptcy, it's using it as a metaphor for a total physiological collapse. Think about financial bankruptcy. It happens when your outgoings exceed your income for so long that the entire infrastructure of your wealth just collapses. There is no coming back from it easily. You are tapped out.
You're done.
The source is applying that to the body. It's suggesting that diabetes isn't just a condition you manage. It represents a body that has completely run out of the resources to handle the fuel you're putting into it.
That is a chilling way to put it. A total systemic collapse. And the source implies that we are all kind of hurtling toward this cliff edge, doesn't it?
If we follow standard dietary advice, yes, that is absolutely the implication.
But then it pivots. And this is where the aha moment comes in for me. The text doesn't just say you're doomed. It says, wait a minute, everything you think constitutes a meal, the rice, the bread, the pasta, those aren't staples.
That's exactly. This is the paradigm shift.
It calls them preferences.
That is the key distinction. It reframes our entire grocery list. The source argues that what we consider staple foods are actually just recent habits. They are, blips on the radar. And that misunderstanding is what leads to the bankruptcy.
I have to admit, when I first read the part where it explicitly rejects genetics, I was skeptical. I feel like every doctor I've ever heard, or just, general pop culture says, oh, diabetes, it runs in the family. It's in your DNA. I mean, are we just going to ignore 50 years of medical advice?
Well, it is the prevailing narrative. It's the comfortable narrative in a way. But this source asks us to look at the timeline of the disease versus the timeline of genetics. Genes don't change that fast.
Right.
But diabetes rates have skyrocketed in, 2 generations? That's the discrepancy this source is attacking.
So we're going to break this down. We're going to look at this low-carb, high-fat solution the text proposes. We're going to look at the 3 million year timeline. And we're going to figure out if we really can block this disease at the source.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with section 1. Defining the crisis. We touched on diabetes bankruptcy. I want to dig deeper into that specific phrasing from the source text. Preventing diabetes bankruptcy. You mentioned it's a systemic failure, but let's play with that metaphor. If my body is a bank, who is the bank manager?
The bank manager is your pancreas, specifically the beta cells inside the pancreas. Their job is to manage the currency of energy in your body.
And the currency is insulin.
Insulin is the mechanism of transaction, yes. Let's look at it this way. You eat a bagel. That bagel turns into glucose sugar in your blood.
Okay.
That sugar is a debt. You cannot leave it in the blood. It's toxic. You have to pay it off. You have to move it into the cells. So the pancreas prints insulin. The insulin opens the doors to the cells. The sugar goes in. The debt is paid.
Okay, so far so good. That sounds like a functioning economy. I eat, I print insulin, I store energy. Where does the bankruptcy come in?
The bankruptcy comes from inflation. Imagine you're eating that bagel for breakfast, then a sandwich for lunch, then pasta for dinner, maybe a soda in between.
The standard modern diet.
Exactly. You are racking up debt constantly. The pancreas is printing insulin nonstop.
The printer is overheating.
Exactly. And just like in an economy, if you print too much money, the currency loses value. The shopkeepers in this analogy start refusing to accept the insulin.
Right.
They say, we are full. We don't want any more sugar. Your money is no good here. That is insulin resistance.
So the pancreas has to print more insulin just to get the same amount of sugar into the cell.
Precisely. It has to work double time, then triple time. It is servicing a massive debt with a currency that is becoming worthless. Bankruptcy implies the point where the pancreas simply cannot keep up.
It just gives up.
The beta cells burn out, they die or they malfunction, the bank closes its doors.
And once the bank closes, the sugar stays in the blood.
And that is full-blown diabetes. That is the system crash.
That is a terrifying image, servicing the debt until the bank closes. So usually when people get diagnosed, they get put on medication, metformin or insulin injections. In this analogy, what is that?
That's a bailout. Or maybe a payday loan. You are injecting external insulin because your internal bank can't print enough.
Oh, I see.
You are managing the immediate crisis, keeping the blood sugar down, but you aren't solving the underlying problem. You are still eating the bagel. You are still racking up the debt. You are just using foreign currency to pay it off.
So the source isn't interested in helping us service the debt. It wants to get us out of debt entirely.
Precisely. It wants solvency. It wants you to stop borrowing.
And the proposed solution for this solvency is very specific. The text says low-carb, high-fat, LCHF.
It's the core mechanism.
It sounds so simple. I mean, we hear about keto, we hear about low-carb all the time. But the source frames it almost like an instruction manual for a machine. Reduce carbohydrates, increase fats. Why is it so adamant about this specific combination? Why can't I just eat low-carb and low-fat? Why do I need the fat?
Because you need energy. That's the trap people fall into. If you cut the carbs, you stop the spending spree, you still need to keep the lights on. You still need fuel for your brain, your heart, your muscles.
Right.
If you cut carbs and you don't add fat, you are just starving yourself. That's sustainable for a week, maybe. Then you crash.
Right, that's the diet misery we all know. You're hungry, you're cranky.
The source claims that the low-carb, high-fat approach isn't just a diet, it's a metabolic rescue operation. By increasing the fat, you are switching the fuel source. You are telling the body, we aren't running on the volatile currency of sugar anymore. We are switching to the gold standard, fat.
A rescue operation. I like that.
The text uses language that suggests active intervention. It says, this diet allows you to recover and block diabetes at the source. Note the word block. It's defensive.
Proactive.
Proactive. It's not slow down the progression. It's put up a wall and stop it.
That brings us to the stakes. Because usually when you read about diabetes, it's very careful. It's about management, lifestyle changes, long-term care. This source is incredibly optimistic in a very aggressive way. It presents a path to completely stopping the disease. Is that realistic? Can you really just stop it?
Well, that's the allure of this source material. It rejects the chronic nature of the disease. It suggests that the chronic part is only true if you keep feeding the fire. Think about an allergy.
Okay.
If you are allergic to peanuts and you keep eating a little bit of peanut butter every day, you will be chronically sick. You will always have inflammation. Is the solution to take anti-inflammatories for the rest of your life? Or is the solution to stop eating peanuts?
Stop eating peanuts, obviously.
This text argues that for a diabetic or a pre-diabetic, carbohydrates are the peanuts. The stakes are essentially, do you want to manage a slow decline by treating the symptoms, or do you want to stop the decline entirely by removing the cause?
And to stop it, we have to change the fuel, which leads us perfectly into section 2, the metabolic switch.
From sugar to fat. This is where we get into the mechanics.
The source talks about switching to fat metabolism. Now, I want to use an analogy here because metabolism can get abstract and science-heavy really fast. I picture a hybrid car. Most of us are driving around in hybrid cars that are designed to run on electricity, clean, efficient energy. But for some reason, we keep pouring dirty, low-grade gasoline into them.
That is a very apt analogy. The human body is dual fuel. It can run on glucose, which is sugar, or it can run on ketones, which come from fat.
And the car is coughing, it's sputtering, smoke is coming out of the exhaust. That's the sugar metabolism. That's the insulin spikes, the energy crashes, the brain fog.
Yes.
The source seems to be saying, stop using the gas. Flip the switch. Use the electric battery. Use the fat.
That lines up perfectly with the text. The source discusses this concept of cellular level energy. But let's dig into what that switch actually looks like. It's not instant, is it?
No, I assume there's a transition.
Yeah.
Like a bit of a bumpy ride at first.
The text implies a transition. When you stop eating carbs, your body panics for a second. It looks for the sugar. It knocks on the door of the liver and says, hey, where's the bagel?
Right. I'm hungry.
And if there's no bagel, the liver has to change its entire manufacturing process. It starts breaking down body fat into ketones. This is the switch. It takes about 24 to 48 hours to really kick in.
And what happens when it kicks in? The text says cellular energy becomes full.
Full. Chungman, in the original context, it conveys a sense of abundance. Think about the difference between a campfire made of kindling and paper versus a coal furnace.
Ooh,
Sugar is kindling, it burns hot, it burns fast, and it dies out. You have to keep throwing paper on it every 2 hours to keep it going. That's why you get hangry.
Hangry is the perfect word. That dip in energy where you feel like you might kill someone if you don't get a snack.
Exactly. That is your cellular energy depleting. But fat. Fat is coal. It is dense. It burns slow. It burns steady. Even a very lean person has tens of thousands of calories of fat stored on their body.
An enormous fuel tank.
The source argues that when you switch to fat metabolism, your cells aren't just surviving, they are thriving. They have access to a massive reservoir of fuel. You don't get hangry because the tank is never empty.
So it's the difference between a panic economy and a stable economy.
Precisely. And the source argues that this state, this full energy state, is superior. It's the state we were designed to be in. Running on sugar leaves the body depleted, constantly trying to balance the books, leading to that bankruptcy. Running on fat keeps the account flush.
Let's go back to that phrase, recover and block diabetes at the source. We asked earlier what the source is. Based on this section, the source isn't a defective pancreas, is it?
No. According to this text, the pancreas isn't the criminal, it's the victim. The source of the problem is the intake itself. It is the carbohydrate.
It's the fuel.
It's the fuel. By reducing the sugar, you are removing the very agent that causes the metabolic dysfunction. You are blocking the attack. The text is very clear. You block it by starving the disease of its fuel. It's empowering, but it's also a little intimidating. Because it puts the ball squarely in our court. We control the fuel nozzle.
Which is a perfect segue to the most controversial part of this text, the genetics.
Oh, yes. Section 3, busting the genetic myth. This is where I think a lot of listeners might pause and say, wait a minute, because we all have that friend, or maybe it's us, who says, well, my dad had diabetes, my grandfather had it. It's just in my cards.
It is the standard fatalism of modern health. It's in my genes. It's almost a comfort blanket. It's not my fault. It's my code.
And the source material, it doesn't just disagree. It vehemently disagrees. It says it is not heredity. Capital letters, essentially.
Right.
But surely there is some genetic component. I mean, science tells us genes matter.
Of course genes matter. But the source is making a distinction between genetic susceptibility and genetic destiny.
Okay, what's the difference?
Think of a loaded gun. Your genes might load the gun. Maybe your pancreas is a little smaller, or your insulin receptors are a little sensitive. That's the loaded gun. But what pulls the trigger? The bagel.
The bagel pulls the trigger. The lifestyle pulls the trigger. The source emphasizes that the problem is not DNA, but eating habits. It argues that we are confusing heredity with heirlooms.
Heirlooms? What do you mean by that?
Think about it. You inherit your genes from your parents, but what else do you inherit? You inherit their recipes.
Oh.
You inherit their pantry. You inherit their approach to comfort. If your parents celebrated every success with cake and mourned every failure with pasta, you learn to do the same.
Oh, wow. So if my dad had diabetes and I have diabetes, it might not be because we share the same DNA sequence. It might be because we share the same Sunday lasagna tradition.
Exactly. We inherit the environment. We inherit the habits. The text argues that we are looking at a familial disease and assuming it's biological when it's actually cultural.
Let's talk about the emotional weight of that.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, that's great news. It means I'm not doomed. But on the other hand, it means it's my fault. That feels harsh.
It is harsh. It's a double-edged sword. If it is DNA, you are a victim. You can say, there was nothing I could do. There is a comfort in that absolution. I am sick because I was born this way.
But you're powerless.
But there is also total hecklessness. If you are a victim of your code, you cannot save yourself. You can only be treated. You are a passenger in a crashing car.
But if it's habits?
If it is habits, then yes, there is responsibility. You have to admit that maybe your choices led to this bankruptcy. That is a painful admission. But the flip side is agency. Total, radical agency.
Right.
If you caused it, you can uncause it. If it's the food, you can change the food. The source is trying to move the reader from a position of victimhood to a position of power.
The power to cure. That's what it offers. It says you can block this, but it requires accepting that the eating habits are the villain.
And that is a hard pill to swallow because those habits are deeply ingrained. They are part of our identity. Who are we without our birthday cake? Who are we without our pizza night?
Right. It feels like an attack on our culture. But the text argues that this culture is actually very, very new, which begs the question, if these habits are so bad for us, if they cause this bankruptcy, why on earth do we all eat this way? Why is the entire world running on carbs?
And that is the question that takes us out of the doctor's office and into the history books. Or rather, the archaeology dig. Section 4, the evolutionary timeline.
This is where the source zooms out, way out. It stops talking about your life or your parents' life and starts talking about the life of the species.
It's necessary context. You can't understand the machine unless you understand the factory where it was built.
It sets up this comparison. A fight between two numbers, 3 million years versus 5,000 years.
It's a staggering contrast.
The text opens the history book. The source states humans evolved while eating meat, carnivores, for 3 million years.
Let's try to visualize that. 3 million years. That is the Pleistocene. That is the Ice Ages. That is the vast, vast majority of our time on this planet.
Yeah.
Close your eyes for a second. Imagine the world of your ancestors.
Okay, I'm imagining.
Cold, very cold. Ice sheets covering Europe and North America. No supermarkets, no agriculture, no wheat fields swaying in the breeze, no fruit trees blooming year-round. What did they eat?
Whatever they could catch.
Exactly. Mammoths, bison, deer, large fatty animals. They hunted. And when they killed an animal, they didn't just eat the lean muscle like we do with our skinless chicken breasts.
No, of course not.
They ate the fat, the marrow, the brains, the organs. They prized the fat because fat is energy.
So if we were designing a user manual for the human machine, the recommended fuel section was written over 3 million years, and it says fat.
Correct. The source describes fat and meat as natural to the human body, not just good, but natural, the default setting. Our insulin systems were designed for this world, a world where sugar was incredibly rare.
Like finding a lucky penny.
Maybe you found a berry bush once a year. Maybe you found a beehive once in a lifetime.
So the pancreas basically sat around playing cards most of the time.
It had a very easy job. It only had to pulse a little insulin now and then. It wasn't built for heavy lifting.
And then we have the other number, the agricultural revolution blip. 5,000 years.
The source refers to this as the agricultural revolution or the agricultural era. 5,000 years sounds like a long time to us. It's all of recorded history.
Sure.
The pyramids, Rome, the internet, it all fits in there.
Yeah.
But biologically, in the context of evolution, it is a blink of an eye.
I love the 24-hour clock analogy for this. If human history is a 24-hour clock, midnight to midnight,
Yeah.
when does agriculture show up?
Let's do the math. If humans appear at midnight, we spend the entire morning hunting, the entire afternoon hunting, the entire evening hunting. Agriculture, the planting of grains, the domestication of carbs, shows up at about 11:58 p.m.,
Right.
maybe 11:59 p.m.
That puts it in perspective. So
Yeah.
for 23 hours and 58 minutes, we ate meat and fat. And then in the last 2 minutes, we started eating bread, rice, corn, potatoes.
And not just eating them, basing our entire civilization on them. We call them staples. But the source argues that those 2 minutes, those 5,000 years, are simply not enough time for our DNA to adapt.
Not even close.
Evolution is slow. It takes tens of thousands of years to change a metabolic pathway. It doesn't pivot on a dime just because we learned how to plant seeds.
So we are walking around with Stone Age bodies,
Mm-hmm.
bodies designed for the savannah, designed for hunting mammoths, but we are living in a grain-fed world.
We're diesel trucks being filled with unleaded gas because the gas station changed ownership 2 minutes ago.
And the engine is knocking. That knocking sound, that's diabetes. That's the bankruptcy. The body is screaming, I don't know how to process this amount of sugar.
Exactly. The agricultural revolution was a technological success. It allowed us to build cities and feed armies, but the source argues it was a metabolic disaster.
We traded one thing for another.
We traded health for calories, we avoided starvation, but we embraced chronic disease.
So, the source is saying that this agricultural revolution is basically an agricultural mistake, or at least a metabolic mismatch.
A mismatch is the perfect word. We have created an environment that no longer matches our biology. We are polar bears in the desert wondering why we are overheating.
This leads us to the final and, I think, most mind-bending section of the source, Section 5, redefining food versus preference. This is where it gets really uncomfortable for those of us who love our sourdough.
It is a linguistic shift that changes how you see your plate. It forces you to categorize your pantry in a way that feels wrong at first.
The source makes a distinction. It categorizes nutrition into 2 buckets. Bucket 1, meat and fat, label, natural. Bucket 2, carbohydrates, label, preference foods.
In the original text, the term is likely something akin to gikosikbum, or luxury goods preference items. Think about cigarettes, alcohol, coffee, things we enjoy, things we crave, but things we do not need to survive. In fact, things that are technically mild toxins that we tolerate for pleasure.
Wait, hold on. Is the text seriously putting rice, bread, pasta, the stuff they serve in school lunches, in the same category as cigarettes or whiskey?
Functionally, yes. In terms of survival necessity, the source argues that meat and fat are essential. You need the proteins, you need the essential fatty acids for your brain, your hormones, your cell walls. You cannot survive without them.
Okay.
But carbohydrates, there's actually no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. You can live your entire life without eating a single gram of sugar or starch. Your body can make the tiny amount of glucose it needs from protein.
So they're optional.
So the source argues they are purely for pleasure. They are recreational eating.
That is a hard pivot for anyone who grew up with the food pyramid. I mean, the bottom of the pyramid, the biggest slab is all carbs, 611 servings a day.
Right.
And this source is saying, no, that whole slab is basically just candy.
It strips carbohydrates of their status as a staple. That's the radical part. We call rice a staple. We call bread the staff of life. The source says, no, it is a preference. It is a flavor. It is a texture we enjoy. But it is not fuel.
Not real fuel.
Not for the human machine. It is a drug we use to spike our dopamine.
So diabetes bankruptcy happens because we are confused. We are treating a preference food, a treat, as a main course.
Exactly. We are trying to run the factory on the recreational budget. We are taking items that should be rare, occasional luxuries like honey found in a hive once a month for a hunter-gatherer, and we are making them breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Every single day.
Our 3 million-year-old bodies look at this influx of preference foods and panic. They don't know what to do with it. They shove it into fat cells, they spike insulin, they burn out. That is the mismatch. That is the bankruptcy.
It's like we're throwing a party every single day, 3 times a day. We're popping champagne for breakfast, and our body is just exhausted from cleaning up the confetti.
And eventually, the cleanup crew quits. They go on strike, and the system collapses.
This really connects all the dots. The bankruptcy is the cleanup crew quitting. The solution is to stop throwing the party and go back to the quiet, steady work of burning fat.
Right.
The history explains why the cleanup crew was never trained for this in the first place.
It's a cohesive argument. It relies on accepting that our modern world is the anomaly. We think this is normal, the supermarkets, the bakeries, the cereal aisles. The source says, this is the weirdest time in history to be a human body. We are living in a carbohydrate wonderland that our genes perceive as a toxic wasteland.
The weirdest time in history to be a human body. I'm going to remember that. It really makes you look at the grocery store differently. It's not a place of abundance, it's a minefield.
It is a minefield of preferences, disguised as necessities.
So let's wrap this up. We've gone deep. We started with the terrifying concept of diabetes bankruptcy, a total systemic collapse where the pancreas bank shuts down. We looked at the metabolic switch, moving from the dirty, volatile fuel of sugar to the abundant, clean energy of fat, the concept of blocking the disease by starving it.
Right. Removing the cause.
We busted the genetic myth. It's not your DNA holding the gun, it's your dinner habits pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
And we grounded it all in the evolutionary timeline. 3 million years of meat versus 5,000 years of carbs.
It all comes down to that redefinition, seeing carbohydrates not as food, but as entertainment.
It really challenges you to look at your grocery cart differently. When you buy that bag of rice or that loaf of bread, you aren't buying sustenance, according to this source. You're buying a ticket to a metabolic roller coaster that your body hates.
And the exit to that roller coaster is the LCHF diet. It's stepping off the ride and walking on solid ground again.
Before we go, I want to leave the listener with something to chew on. Something that comes from the logic of this source, but maybe pushes it one step further. Expert, if you had to leave them with one provocative thought, what would it be?
I would ask this. If carbohydrates are just a preference, a habit we picked up 5,000 years ago, and meat is our natural state, Are we actually causing a biological crisis every time we confuse a treat with a meal? Think about how you treat candy. You know it's bad for you. You have it on Halloween or a birthday. You don't eat a bowl of Skittles for breakfast and call it nutrition. But we do that with toast. We do that with cereal. We do that with bagels.
Every day.
So the question is, what would happen to your energy levels tomorrow? What would happen to your brain fog? What would happen to your mood if you started treating bread the way you treat candy? As a rare, dangerous exception rather than a rule. Are you brave enough to demote your staples to snacks?
Are you brave enough to demote your staples to snacks?
Yeah.
Wow. That's the challenge, isn't it? It sounds so simple, but I think for most of us, that requires a complete rewiring of how we view the world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a fascinating, if somewhat terrifying, look at how looking back 3 million years might just save our future. As always, stay curious and maybe check what's on your plate.
Until next time.
See you next time on The Deep Dive.